You can think of this as alcohol in a pill. After he drank a bottle of alcohol, he thought this is what it's like to feel normal. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Dr. B, and today I want to consider the passing of Matthew Perry, who is a man, a human being who had a lifelong struggle with drugs and alcohol. I want to really make this a tribute to his passing and continue his legacy by respecting the wish that I heard him describe in an interview. In the event of my passing, I want to be remembered as someone who was always open to someone knocking on my door, giving me a call, or reaching out to me and saying, listen, I have a problem with drugs and alcohol. Can you help me? This is what he said he wanted to be remembered for first. Secondly, he was the famous co-star of the famous sitcom Friends, extremely talented comedian and actor, extremely talented producer, extremely talented author. He recently published an extremely shockingly open, candid, and honest and human memoirs about his life and his struggles with drugs and alcohol. Let's get started. In terms of his passing, he was found in his Los Angeles home a couple of days ago in the hot tub. He was unresponsive. I don't want to delve too much into that or the substances he may have been using or the cause of death. He had enormous health problems recently in the last few years with an extensive stay in the hospital, being on an ECMO machine, and he really overcame a lot. And he had quite a few health problems, mostly secondary to long-term substance abuse and damage to his body. I don't want to really get into that at this time, but I want to take some parts of his life as he described it, as I've read about it, as he presented it in his interviews, and along that way also make some speculative clinical judgment about potential diagnostic possibilities that he may have suffered from. And it's not to diagnose him, it's not to dishonor him, it's not to disrespect him, it's not to place any blame on his family, friends, life, but really to use it as he wished so that somebody out there may take a lesson, the benefit, and be able to reach out themselves and deal with their substance abuse, mental health, alcohol problem. Let's get started. One of the things I want to point out that he himself described was when he was maybe 30 days old, his parents gave him phenobarbital as he was suffering what seems to be a description of colic, abdominal pain. Really, at that age, it seems like what he was doing is having some sort of a crying fit, enough to the extent that his parents were concerned. And they took him to a medical doctor. Keep in mind, this is 53 years ago, right? 54 years ago. And the doctor's solution at that time was to give him 30 days of phenobarbital. 30 days of phenobarbital daily where they medicated him with this stuff. What is phenobarbital, and why would we be shocked at this time? Again, this is not to blame the parents. This is not to blame the doctor, but it's sort of good information to understand some of the things I have described in the past about the developing brain and the impact of environment, or in this case, a direct administering of medication to a child. Phenobarbital is a barbiturate, okay? Barbiturate is the predecessor to benzodiazepines, Valium, Xanax, Klonopin, whatever it is. This stuff was heavily used in the 60s, 70s before benzodiazepines came into the scene. It's a marvelous drug. It works well for the things that it is needed for, has a narrow therapeutic index because it's where you get to get the clinical effect and the potential for overdose is a very thin line. But what is significant here is giving a very early developing brain 30 days of this stuff. It's profound. You can think of this as alcohol in a pill. And he himself says this may have played a role in his future inability to ever sleep and have chronic insomnia, I would say it's very possible when you understand how development of the central nervous system works at that time. But I think, when you think about the fact that this stuff can be used as an anxiolytic, can be used as replacement therapy when you're coming off of alcohol, this could have been a profound influence on how his brain developed and his potential ongoing anxiety and the way he always felt. A couple of other related points to what we can kind of categorize as impact of development in early years on potential outcomes that include substance abuse and other mental health issues and coping mechanisms. Fast forward to when he was 14 years old, and there is in his book and in my multiple interviews, he describes how he felt when he first had alcohol with his best friends. And he describes what I've often described the first time when people use opiates that you need to really be careful about is after he drank a bottle of alcohol, he thought, this is what it's like to feel normal. If you have a younger loved one or children that if you can tease that out and describes that kind of thing, that's a red flag that something needs to be done immediately. Prevention is always better than intervention after the fact, okay? This is very possible amongst many other things. Remember, substance abuse and all diseases are complex interactions and factors that influence the outcomes. But if you think about it, and if we want to simplify it, we can even say, wow, at the very early age of 30 days, his brain may have been set up to think that or to become wired in a way that without the sedating impact and effect of a sedative, he was not normal and suffered chronic anxiety. It's not that simple, but it is important to note and somehow understand and infuse into the myriad complex development patterns that could lead to things like substance abuse and other mental health issues. Additionally, one other thing to consider when you consider the developmental factors for Matthew is his father was American. He was somewhat of a celebrity and a star. I think he was in the Old Spice commercials. His mother was also somewhat of a celebrity. She was assistant to the Prime Minister of Canada. And, these are people that are, to the extent of their stardom, they're sort of in the limelight. And again, living lives that are abnormal and outside of what normal people should experience. And this lends itself to the formation of his identity, his idea of himself, his view of his relationship with himself, his immediate caregivers, and the rest of the world. This could have played some part in it. And I point out two episodes. Clearly, there was an early separation from the parents from each other. This may have played an important role. And he describes two events, two things that they're both sort of heart-wrenching. He describes, I think he was saying he had some idea or some vision or some fantasy, or maybe it was a real situation where he was in this grand ballroom following his mother behind her, and all these people were looking at her and paying her tribute and respect, and all he wanted her to do was to turn around. He was 5 years old and acknowledge his existence. That's profound and it's heart-wrenching. And it is in no way, shape, or form indicting mom. I do not think she was doing anything wrong. But nevertheless, it can be an honest lesson for us in terms of the impact of those significant objects in our life in the developmental years. Parents separated. They're wonderful parents, it seems like. They both went on to get married. And he seemed to have very, very, very positive influences in his life in terms of step parents. But he describes his recent, long, very concerning hospitalization. And when he finally woke up, he looked up and he saw both of his parents there. That made an impression in his mind. Whether we want to like it or not, it is a fact, it is a reality, and it is something that we as a collective, as a society, have given our stamp of approval to, in terms of it is okay to separate, it is what it is. Also, it's not the individual's fault. This is how the systems work in our society today. That doesn't make it okay. That doesn't mean it's going to be healthy for us and not have an impact. That's in terms of his developmental years. The second thing I want to move from that is something that he discusses and brings out in a cogent way, very coherently. And he describes what many scholars, researchers, thinkers bring out is, he describes that celebrity status did not fill the voids that he had, did not deal with the substance abuse issues that he had. His yearning, his absolute desire for stardom, fame, money just didn't do the trick. And in fact, I think for many of these celebrities, it makes it much, much worse. I think he was insightful enough, human enough, kind enough, honest enough to come to that realization and attempt to explore it through his whole life, not only who he is, but what his relationship to those around him is and what his greater role as a human being is. But it really speaks to our greater collective, our celebrity culture, our maniacal attempts for our 15 minutes of fame. It really points to certain emptiness and void that is occurring across the board in our society, with increasing incidence and prevalence of mental health issues, of substance abuse issues, okay? Here is a guy that has lived it and is telling you this is not the answer, okay? And in that pursuit, he attempted to find meaning and fulfillment in himself, and it became a lifelong struggle, okay? So not only is finding that celebrity status, that fame, that money is not going to fill any void you have, we have a greater collective and society that has completely, in many ways, disconnected from reality. There is a cognitive dissonance here. There is a loss of individual and collective narrative that is so critical to the formation of self and meaning and humanity. It is so bad that globally it's contributing to all of these issues that we're seeing from mental health, anxiety, depression, substance abuse. And we see the outcomes of it every day when we look at the statistics. And here is a man actually giving testimony to that for us. And I think if one is a celebrity and one is somebody who's operating in that sort of 1% group and is suffering from substance abuse, it's not about how much money you spend in terms of your treatment. It's about finding somebody who is both knowledgeable and understands the need to bring you back to earth and remind you, or for the first time, find who you actually are. The third thing I want to touch upon, as I've read and some of the time him describing some of the treatments that he has gotten over time. He has gone probably to big treatment centers, and I heard some of the protocols used and his descriptions of them. And one thing that kind of stuck out to me, he continued to discuss detox. and what a hell and horrifying thing it was. And this is a guy with a polysubstance abuse problem. And even he describes detox as it's the period of time that you have to get off everything. That is not what detox should be. And it should really be called something like medication assisted withdrawal symptom management, and treating substance abuse in the long run, which is a chronic issue, should take the fact into consideration when there is polysubstances involved, and there should be a humane, long-term, safe algorithm in the approach of getting people off each one by one. That takes a lot of knowledge, understanding, time, and at some points, a way for payments to occur that makes sense in a system that does not allow for that kind of care in the long run. If we did have that, we would have much better outcomes for everybody across the board. In terms of the celebrities, they should be able to understand that going into a treatment facility and paying $30, $60, $120,000, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, it's not going to cut it for you or anyone else. Substance abuse is a chronic issue, and what that means is not, hey, I'm an alcoholic, that's who I am for life, but hey, I am a human being with these issues, and they take long-term care with professionals that understand that and approach everything from my medication management, picking which drug to come off of at what time, at what point, giving potentially safe replacement medication, and managing your symptoms so that quote unquote detox period, and there's no such thing as detox, is managed in a humane, safe, compassionate way so you can be successful in the long run. Again, I want to pay tribute to Matthew Perry and his passing. I think he was an incredible human being, and then someone who was incredible at his craft. And I hope that using this platform at this time with his untimely, tragic, and unfortunate passing, I was able to use some of his life and some of the information that I have gained to continue the work that he wanted to be remembered by, which is I am somebody here to help those in need dealing with substance abuse. Rest in peace wherever you are, and I'm sure you're going to continue what you do in the greater context of the universe.